Good morning, my magnificent friends. We're about to go live. I just need to hit a few buttons. Good morning, my magnificent ones. It's Friday again. Welcome back to Tea with Sue. I've got my flamingo mug this morning. I love the long necks of the flamingos, and they're such a pretty color. Well, I hope you have your cup of tea or your cup of coffee. Just sit back and relax. We're going to spend the next 20 minutes just kind of debriefing from the week and looking forward to whatever's going to happen next. So I want to start by asking you, have you ever had one of those days? I call it a lower than a snake's belly day, where you feel kind of out of sorts. And I had one of those days this week. I was in a blue funk. I woke up upset and a little bit angry, and then I was angry because I was angry. If you've got to know me a little bit, you know that I have a pretty sunny personality most of the time. I like to think of myself as the quintessential Pollyanna. So I look for silver linings, and if I'm feeling down, then I do my best to, pull myself back up. But this particular day this week, I was not pulling myself up. And it was an interesting process because usually when I think back to when I was growing up, if I was upset about something and I was crying, well, it didn't take very long for one parent to say, "Stop that crying or I'm going to give you something to cry about." So I learned to stuff all of those negative feelings. If I was sad, they didn't want to see my sad face. If I was mad, they didn't want that either. And so I was taught to present a sunny look to the world, keep your sunny side up. And I like doing that, no question. I mean, that's the place I prefer to be. So when I woke up and was feeling very out of sorts, I thought, "Sue, this is not like you." Well, of course it's like me, because that's exactly where I was. And so there was no point denying it. There was no point pushing against it. So I did something that I don't normally do. I just decided to be in it and to just say, well, this is where I'm at. I don't feel like trying to get out of it. I have the luxury of being able to just do as I please today. So let's just play this out and see what happens. So I took a day off from the world. I just shut myself off from everything and everyone and allowed myself to be where I was at. And it wasn't that comfortable, I have to say. But I realized that one of the things I learned as I was going through it was how easily I judge what's going on with me. And maybe you do too. The times that we beat ourselves up for being less than we think we should be, or we think we could be, and so on. And it can happen so easily because all it takes is a failure or a mistake or something that can set us off and say, "What's wrong with you that you're not this, and this?" And it's rare that we turn to, well, what's right with us? So if you've been following along with Global Strong for February, you know that our theme this month is self-love. So today I wanted to talk about that because it seems like such a simple thing. And yet when I ask people to name right off the top of their head, name 5 things that you love about yourself, they're going, well, they're hard pressed to come up with one. And if I say, okay, well, okay, name 5 things that you don't like about yourself. Oh, well, bing, 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 bing. They've got them right at their fingertips. And that was me too. I was so unaware of who I was as a person and what might be good about me that I couldn't name it. I was so unaware. So many years ago, I had a session with a group that suggested that I make a list. I write a list of 1 to 100. And on that list, I was to put, starting at number 1, of course, write down a good point about myself. Something that I liked, something that I admired, something that I loved, anything at all. There were no limitations on it. Didn't have to be in any particular category or from anything at all. And they said, you're going to get stuck. And when you get stuck, it's perfectly okay. You know, this is not a test. You don't pass or fail if you don't get to 100. But the idea is, so if you get stuck, then ask someone that cares about you, well, what do you like about me? Is there something good that you could say about me? Well, that in itself was a challenge because I wasn't used to asking for feedback. Like, okay, well, what do you like about me? And so it was interesting. And they were right. I struggled. I laboriously worked my way through 10 and I did things like, well, I like my hair and like my teeth and I like that I can sing. And so I struggled. It was hard. But then I would ask a friend and say, I have to do this exercise and I'm really struggling. Can you give me like something that you admire about me or you like about me? Well, all of a sudden they gave me 3 or 4 things that weren't on my list. And I'm going, oh, okay, really? Okay, cool. And so then I continued on and I said to them, look, if you want to do this list, I'm happy to help you with yours too. So it felt good to have people who were also participating. Well, the group had said to me, by the time you get to 100, and they said, you have way more than you have way more than 300 good things about you. But we suspect that by the time you get to 100, you will have got the message. You will see yourself differently. And they were right. They were absolutely right. First of all, I went from a stage of being very unaware of who I was as a person. And I was in my mid-20s, I think, when I was given this exercise. And bless the fact that I got it that young, because it really helped me begin to understand that I was a person in my own right who had things that were great about me and had things to contribute and talents and gifts and so on that I had previously been unaware of. So I thought today that this was an exercise that I would really encourage you to do. So I'm bringing it forward. I used to teach this particular exercise to my students at the university level. And quite honestly, they resisted doing it. Oh, they didn't want to do it. But it was part of the career focus of the program. And I'm saying to them, how in the world can you get out there and promote yourself from your resume standpoint and so on, if if you don't even know what's good about you, how can you toot your own horn? Which in this day and age, if you want to stand out and you want to be visible to other people so that you can go in the direction that you want to go, it has to start with you. You need to be very aware of how strong you are, how reliable you are, how forthright you are, how cooperative you are. All of those things are attributes and good things about you that you want to share with other people, so that if you're encouraged to come into a team environment, they know a little bit about who you are and can make a good decision to bring you in. So there was some practical reasons, obviously, for them doing this exercise. And even though they struggled and complained, and I would encourage them along the way, I'd say, well, things like, well, can you cook? Well, yeah, but I learned how to cook. And I said, yes, well, I know some people that took cooking lessons and still can't boil water. So that's a good point. And so just because you didn't know it and then you learned it doesn't mean it's not a good thing about you. So I would broaden their horizons as much as I could to get them really opening up to seeing the magnificence of who they were and who they are. Well, it was kind of fun at the end of the classes how many of my students came to me and said, I didn't like doing that exercise, but when I got to the end of it, when I got to my 100, it was great. I felt so good about myself. I felt stronger. I felt more powerful. I felt more confident. And well, that's the point, right? Is to really move into that arena. So I'm going to encourage you to get out your pen and paper or your tablet or whatever you write on, whatever you're comfortable writing on, and start your list. Start 1 and go right through to 100. And you can be as specific or as general as you like. Oh, I love my eyelashes. I think I have great taste when it comes to earrings. So it doesn't matter what it is, whatever you notice about yourself. I'm strong. I love my family. And so all of those things can be good points about you. I try to do something good for somebody every day. Well, I love to smile. On and on it goes. So it can be physical characteristics. It can be skills and talents that you have. It can be your personal attributes, your moral fiber, your character, all of those kinds of things. They all count in there, and it's your list. You can put on it whatever you want, right? So the goal is to get to 100. Well, of course, my students, when they got to 100, then I would say, oh, well, now carry on and go to 200. I'm not sure how many did, but that first 100 can lock in who you are and how you are. So when I had my lower than a snake's belly day on I think it was Tuesday, I was in such a funk. No, it was Wednesday, come to think of it. It was wacky Wednesday. And I was really woebegone and feeling very sorry for myself. The trouble with a pity party, right, is you invite people and nobody shows up and you don't even want to be there. So, but I stayed in my pity party for the whole day. And I thought, well, I'll just sit with it, be with it, see what happens. And it was so interesting that by the next morning, I was feeling much better. Like I just didn't feel the way I'd felt the other day. So it was a good reminder that regardless of how things are in any moment, that old saying that goes, this too shall pass. So whether it's a great day or a horrible day, it all passes. And so it's temporary. So we don't, I know I've had a tendency to cling to when I'm feeling really miserable. I think, oh, this is never going to end. Well, of course it is. It does. It just passes. Our moods pass, the days pass, time passes. So it will all eventually move itself along. And of course, you can encourage it. So I've had days where I woke up feeling kind of miserable and looked at it and I thought, how long do I want to stay in this? Yeah, no more than 20 minutes. So then I thought, okay, how can I work myself out of this then? What are some things I can do that will piece by piece just pick up my mood and pick it up and pick it up and pick it up to the point where I'm going, I'm happy again. So what would that be like? So I love music, so I put on some kind of funky dance music and I found myself just dancing around the floor and there was nobody looking in the windows. And so I just did my thing. It was great. I looked out my window and I had a particularly beautiful vista that I could look out at, and just looking at the sky and nature and how beautiful it was out there just really lifted my spirits. And I began to think about all the things that I was grateful for in that moment. Like I'm grateful that I have a cup of tea. I'm grateful that I got out of bed this morning and I didn't have any aches and pains. I'm grateful that there's food in my fridge and I have gas in my car and the rent is paid. And I mean, there's so many things that we have to be grateful for in our lives. I'm grateful that I woke up and I'm here to face another day. So my list of gratitude things I was grateful for, also just helped lift my mood and cheer me up. And I realized, well, even though things were feeling kind of bleak a few minutes ago, they don't feel that way anymore. So when we talk about what's going on in our world, there are days when there's not a lot we can change, right? As that very popular saying goes, it is what it is, which is true. It is what it is, annoying as that is. And at the time, it doesn't feel as if we can do much about it. Well, we may not be able to do much about that thing, but we can change how we perceive it. We can change the way we look at it. We can change whether we judge it or not. If we don't judge it as good or bad, then it's neutral. And we just say, oh, well, that's what's happening. We look out and see it snowing. Or last week it was brutally cold here and I didn't want to go out. So mostly I didn't. Well, the weather's the weather. Whether we like it or whether we don't like it, the weather's the weather. It's how we take it in or our perspective on it that makes a difference in our attitude about our lives. And so there it is right there, attitude. We can change our attitude about it, or we can change our outlook on it and say, well, maybe I prefer the sun and it's snowing out, so it's kind of gloomy. But the sun's up there somewhere shining. It didn't quit shining just because I can't see it. It's still there. So I'll just enjoy the snow falling and maybe tomorrow the sun will shine. So because the snow will eventually pass. So it's about our perspective on life. And I think it's easier to have a more positive outlook on life when we have a more positive perspective of who we are. If we're feeling strong inside, if we're feeling connected with ourselves, with our inner being. I call it me, myself, and I. And sometimes the three of us have a little conversation because one of us isn't kind of on board. And so then my Uncle John used to call it an attitude adjustment meeting. And so there's lots of times that even throughout the day when I adjust my attitude, and there's times when I'm hanging out in resistance or reluctance or just total denial. And I find it's important that I just get over myself and say, okay, here we go. So I'll give you a quick example of that. I have not, I'm a good driver and I've driven for many, many years. The thing that I have never liked to do is back up. And so when we lived in places where there was a long driveway and I had to back out of the garage and then down the driveway, you could always tell that it was me backing out in the wintertime because the snow tracks would go off the pavement onto the grass and back. So I'd excuse my poor backward driving skills by saying, well, I'm a forward thinking kind of person. I don't do backward. So that was my excuse, right? And I was annoyed with myself that I couldn't back up very well. And I was nervous about it because I couldn't see as well backing up as, even when I'd shoulder check and turn around and look out all my mirrors and so on, there was a part of me that was fearful that I'd run into something that I hadn't seen. So I avoided backing up as much as possible. Well, then this fall, when I moved into my new apartment, the parking garage where my parking spot is, there's a pillar right on the one side of it, and then the other car beside me to the right of me, and then another pillar. And I soon realized that most of the people in the parkade were backing into their spots. And I'm thinking, oh, that's not happening. I'm not going to do that. But then I realized that it was hard to go in front ways just because of the angle and the pillar. So I thought, oh, well, I wonder if I can back up into here. And I just decided that I was going to get over that weakness that I'd had for so many years about not being able to back up. And so I just started backing into my parking spot. Well, there were some days I'd have to, because I couldn't figure out the angle very well, I'd have to turn and back up and go forward. And I mean, it was a nightmare, but I did it anyway. And then every now and again, I do it in one try. I'm going, yes, a victory. So now, as a growth step, it seems like such a small thing. And yet for me, it was a big deal because I've kind of beat myself up for years over that. And now I don't need to do that anymore. I can congratulate myself on the days that I just park perfectly. I just swing around and back right in, and there I am. And there's other days when I have to go forward and back to, get myself positioned properly. And that's okay because I know I can do it now. So the thing that is the result of all of this, when I work on myself, and I want to encourage you to work on you, the bottom line is learn to be your own best friend. Why? Well, I can think of some compelling reasons. First of all, you know what a best friend is like. Everybody has one, I'm sure, at some point. Somebody that, even if it's your dog, is your best friend. Well, you know what they're like. They don't judge you. They're there to love you, and they just do, no matter what. And if you're your own best friend, let's face it, you live with you 24/7. Well, it's not so good. I mean, how do you like living with someone that you really don't like, or you kind of hate, or you don't feel good about? So befriend yourself. If you're moving into a position of self-love, then find ways to be your own best friend. And if it means making a list of the characteristics of a best friend that you most admire, well, you wouldn't know that if you didn't always also have those characteristics in you, right? You wouldn't even recognize it. So it becomes important to say, well, how does a best friend behave? And how can I behave that way to myself? Well, I don't judge my best friend, that person out there that I consider to be a really good friend to me. I just accept them for who they are. So there's the first thing, accepting ourselves for who we are. And let's face it, nobody knows you better than you do, or has the opportunity to know you, your thoughts, your dreams, your what's going on inside of you. Nobody knows that except you, because you live with you all the time. So you can have your back. You can build the trust in yourself to do whatever it is that's most important to you, to make all your dreams and plans come true. And you're the one who sits with you when you're sad, you're upset, you're always there with you. So doesn't it make sense to really love who you are? So begin with your 100 things that you like about yourself and add to that and say, all right, what else can I do to be more and more of my own best friend? And watch what happens. It's quite magical, and it's quite lovely, because then, you can hold that love for yourself close. And of course, the more love we have for ourselves, the more we have to give to the world. So it would be really, really important to do that. So my magnificent friends, I encourage you to love yourself this week. Make your list of 100 things that you love about yourself. On my app, the Magnificence Mentor, I have an article called Be Your Own Best Friend. I think it's 3 reasons and 7 ways. So there's some extra tips in there of things you can do. So you just download the app, and I think it's under the happiness topic that you'll find the Be Your Own Best Friend. In the meantime, have a magnificent weekend. I'll look forward to seeing you next Friday. And remember, you are magnificent.